Third gender, or third sex, is a concept in which individuals are categorized, either by themselves or by society, as neither man nor woman. It is also a social category present in societies that recognize three or more genders. The term third is usually understood to mean other. Some anthropologists and sociologists have described fourth and fifth genders. The state of personally identifying as, or being identified by society as, a man, a woman, or other, is usually also defined by the individual's gender identity and gender role in the particular culture in which they live. Most cultures use a gender binary, having two genders. In cultures with a third or fourth gender, these genders may represent very different things. To native Hawaiians and Tahitians, Mahu is an intermediate state between man and woman, or a person of indeterminate gender. Some traditional Dine Native Americans of the southwestern U.S. acknowledge a spectrum of four genders: feminine woman, feminine man, and masculine man. The term third gender has also been used to describe the Hijras of India who have gained legal identity, Fa'afafine of Polynesia, and Swan virgins. A culture recognizing a third gender does not in itself mean that they were valued by that culture, and often is the result of explicit devaluation of women in that culture. While found in a number of non-Western cultures, concepts of third, fourth, and some gender roles are still somewhat new to mainstream Western culture and conceptual thought. The concept is most likely to be embraced in the modern LGBT or queer subcultures. While mainstream Western scholars, notably anthropologists who have tried to write about the South Asian Hijras or the Native American gender variant and two-spirit people, have often sought to understand the term third gender solely in the language of the modern LGBT community. Other scholars, especially indigenous scholars, stress that mainstream scholars' lack of cultural understanding and context has led to widespread misrepresentation of third gender people, as well as misrepresentations of the cultures in question, including whether or not this concept actually applies to these cultures at all. Since at least the 1970s, anthropologists have described gender categories in some cultures which they could not adequately explain using a two-gender framework. At the same time, feminists began to draw a distinction between sex and gender. Anthropologist Michael G. Pelletz believes our notions of different types of genders deeply affect our lives and reflects our values in society. In Pellett's book, Gender, Sexuality, and Body Politics in Modern Asia, he describes, for our purposes, the term gender designates the cultural categories, symbols, meanings, practices, and institutionalized arrangements bearing on at least 5 sets of phenomena. Androgynes, who are partly male and partly female in appearance or of indeterminate sex gender, as well as intersexed individuals, also known as hermaphrodites, who to one or another degree may have both male and female sexual organs or characteristics. Transgender people, who engage in practices that transgress or transcend normative boundaries and are thus by definition, transgressively gendered, and neutered are unsexed, engendered individuals such as eunuchs. Intersex people are born with sex characteristics, such as chromosomes, gonads, or genitals that, according to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. A sex and gender distinction is not universal, and Pelletz's description of gender as designating biological variations as well as cultural practices is not unique. In a study of arguments that intersex people fit into a third gender classification, intersex scholar Morgan Holmes argues that much analysis of a third sex or third gender is simplistic. Much of the existing work on cultural systems that incorporate a third sex portray simplistic visions in which societies with more than two sex, gender categories are cast as superior to those that divide the world into just two. I argue that to understand whether a system is more or less oppressive than another, we have to understand how it treats its various members, not only its thirds. Like non-intersex people, some intersex individuals may not identify themselves as either exclusively female or exclusively male. but most appear to be men or women. A clinical review suggests that between 8.5 to 20% of people with intersex conditions may experience gender dysphoria, while sociological research in Australia, a country with a third X sex classification, shows that 19% of people born with atypical sex characteristics selected an X or other option, while 52% are women, 23% men and 6% unsure. Alex McFarlane is believed to be the first person in Australia to obtain a birth certificate recording sex as indeterminate, and the first Australian passport